the pop of champagne and the clink of glasses. That's how most celebrations begin. But for him, it all started with a phrase no man ever forgets. We need to talk. He was a husband, a father, a man who had built his life brick by brick, and in a single moment, it all began to crumble. She, the woman he once worshipped, suddenly spoke of her desires as if he no longer factored into the equation. And when the truth surfaced, how do you compare a blow that doesn't come from a fist, but from the voice of the one you love? Betrayal doesn't always arrive with a slap. Sometimes it looks like a ticket to Hawaii. Sometimes it even has a name. And if you think it can't get any worse, wait until the daughter enters the scene. She knew. She approved. And this is only the beginning. Hey everyone. Before we start, don't forget to check the description and subscribe to my good friend's channel. It would really help him out. So, let's get into it. I figured I'd played a decent round. It wasn't my personal best, but I came off the 19th hole sitting 7 over par. Pretty respectable by my usual standards. Over the last few years, my buddy Miles and I had developed a routine of hitting the golf course a couple times each month. He's about 10 years older than me. We first met not long after Bianca and I moved into our current place, which was 6 years ago. Miles is a big guy, naturally likable, and has a knack for conversation. He's in real estate and seems to do fairly well for himself, though the market has its ups and downs. His wife, Penelope, tall, slender, blonde, had been a stay-at-home mom to their son Caleb, who'd just turned 18 and was gearing up for his high school graduation and the start of college life. Penelope and Bianca hit it off right away and quickly started spending a lot of time together. Bianca's blonde, too. Her hair's naturally straight, which suits her, though every now and then she talks about wanting a bit more body or curl. These days it falls a little past her shoulders. She keeps herself in good shape. Sure, there are a few signs of age here and there, but nothing surprising for a woman of 41. To me, she'd always been the most beautiful woman I knew, or at least that's what I used to believe, before everything changed. You know the kind of shift I mean, the kind that begins with a phrase no man ever wants to hear. We need to talk. There's never been a husband alive who heard those words and thought, fantastic, this should be enjoyable. So when Bianca said them that Saturday afternoon, I immediately braced myself for bad news. It's instinct. We start cycling through every worst-case scenario. I hadn't been in the garage recently, so my initial guess was something might be wrong with her car, but that wouldn't be a huge deal. I earn a good living as an engineer, so any kind of car trouble or unexpected bill was manageable. Bianca knew that, so I shifted my thoughts to more personal matters. Maybe something had happened in the family. Our parents were still with us, and between us, 3 of our 8 grandparents were still living. Maybe something had happened to one of them. Or worse, maybe something had happened to our daughter, Harper. Harper and Bianca had always been extremely close. We often joked that Harper was Bianca's mirror image. She had the same straight blonde hair and a deep love for shopping. She'd just started dating not long ago, 18 now, and her boyfriend Derek seemed like a decent enough guy. As far as I knew, they weren't intimate, but let's face it, dads are often the last to find out. Was Harper pregnant? The idea made my stomach churn. That might explain Bianca's serious tone. Still, it was something we could work through. Or, another possibility, could Bianca be pregnant? The thought of having another child at this stage in life was almost surreal. I had enjoyed fatherhood the first time around, and maybe I'd even enjoy it again, but perhaps Bianca assumed I wouldn't welcome the idea now. All these thoughts flew through my head in a flash as I sat down across from my wife of 18 years at the kitchen table. Harlan, sweetheart, you know how much I love you, right? Of course, Beck. I believed her without hesitation. I kept my voice light, assuming she was working up the nerve to tell me something like a surprise pregnancy. I could handle that. But then another idea crept in. Why say I love you like that, unless she was about to say something that might make me question it? I do love you, Harlan, truly, and I always will. I still look forward to growing old with you." That was exactly the kind of thing I'd always hoped to hear. "Same here, honey." But it was getting more obvious this wasn't just a sweet moment between us. "So what is it?" I asked. "Harlan, we've been together for 20 years, married for 18 of those. My feelings for you have only deepened over time, and I've been content pouring my energy into this marriage and raising our incredible daughter. Other than spending time with friends now and then, I haven't asked much for myself. Wouldn't you agree?" This clearly wasn't about Harper anymore. Bianca was setting the stage for something she knew I wouldn't take lightly. She'd never shown any interest in having another child, and by now, I could see that theory didn't add up. "I agree, babe. You've always put our family first, and we've always tried to encourage you to make space for your own happiness, too." "Exactly," she said. "And I've appreciated that more than you probably realize. It's one of the reasons I trust that you'll understand what I'm about to say." "All right," I said. "I'm listening." "Harlan, as we get older, our bodies change. We slow down, our energy shifts, our sex drive changes. You've always been a passionate partner, you still are, but I think we both know things have tapered off for you. It's nothing personal, it's biology, and I've accepted that." I wasn't thrilled with the turn this was taking. No man wants to hear his wife critique his virility, or what's left of it. My stomach sank. She continued, and I didn't know how else to react, so I just nodded along. I figured she was leading up to some kind of suggestion or compromise. But for me, it's been the opposite. My desire for physical closeness has actually increased. I feel that need almost daily now. Don't think I don't feel the same way, Beck. I love you, and I care about your needs too, but we can't pretend that age doesn't affect us differently. "I get it," she said. "I'm not blaming you. It's just the reality of getting older." "Okay, Bianca. I think I understand what you're saying about things not being the same between us in bed. But can you please just tell me what this is really about?" As she spoke about how I no longer satisfied her completely, it dawned on me that this entire discussion was merely a lead-up, a calculated step toward asking me to sanction an affair, and I wasn't wrong. "Harlan, please, try to see where I'm coming from," she said. "This isn't about putting you down, I just need you to listen." She was choosing her words carefully, clearly hoping I wouldn't explode, praying we could somehow talk this through calmly, the way we used to. I stayed silent, didn't budge, I just listened. "Harlan, there's someone else. I've been involved with another man for nearly a year now." The words landed like a slap. I couldn't speak, so she went on, probably just to fill the void that followed. "We meet a few times a week," she said, "but I don't love him. My love is still with you. I've taken great care to ensure you never suspected anything. I planned around your moods, made sure everything at home remained steady. You've always had access to me whenever you needed, and that won't change. You're my husband. Your needs still come first." "So this is how things will be going forward?" I asked. "Yes, Harlan. That's exactly what I'm saying. My appetite has grown, and this is how I'm choosing to satisfy it. But I want you to know, it doesn't change how I feel about you, or what we share in bed." "Who is he?" "I'm not going to answer that. It won't help anything. He's not part of your world. You've never met him, and he's not connected to your life in any way. He's just someone I encountered." "And you actually expect me to go along with this because I love you?" "Yes, because I believe you do love me, and because I know you want me to be content, to feel complete. You haven't noticed any difference so far, and I've done everything to keep it that way. Think about it. If we separated, you'd be dealing with alimony, custody arrangements, living away from your child. I don't want that for you, Harlan. I care about you. It's better for all of us if nothing changes." I forced myself to keep a straight face, but underneath, I was boiling. How dare she dangle divorce over my head like some threat? What happens when Harper finds out her mother has been cheating? Would she really be okay with that? Well, you certainly came prepared. This was manipulation, start to finish. You let me believe everything was fine, built up my trust, and now you're leaving me hanging. Please don't think of it that way, love. Don't call me that. Just don't. Yelling and swearing won't solve this, Harlan. Maybe not, I snapped, but at least it makes me feel like I'm not being walked over. I know this hurts. I really do. But I swear, this doesn't have to change anything between us. You didn't notice before, and you won't notice moving forward. This is something I'm doing for myself, privately, for my own well-being. It's not like I'm taking anything from you, she added. Think of it like a side project, just something I do with my own time. All right, let's pretend I believe that. Even though I don't. Why now? What do you mean? She asked. If you've managed to keep this hidden for a year, why come clean now? Why not just keep lying? I haven't lied to you, Harlan. You vowed to stay faithful when we got married. You're breaking that vow and keeping it secret. How is that not a lie? Every day you've been sleeping with that man. You've been lying to me. He's not a bad person, she said, trying to defend him. He's actually a kind man. I wouldn't have chosen someone cruel. He sleeps with married women. That makes him garbage, no matter how nice he is. For the record, he didn't pursue me. I approached him. It was entirely my decision. That only makes your betrayal worse. I didn't give her time to answer. So, again, why now? Why confess after a year of deceit? You broke my trust every single day. Why admit it today? Because, she said softly, I want to spend my life proving how much I love you, and how grateful I am that you're letting me keep this one piece of independence. And this Hawaii trip? You're actually planning to spend a week with your lover, like it's some kind of romantic retreat? You said this wouldn't affect us, and yet you're flying off with him while I stay here, working, paying the bills? And when you come back, I'm just supposed to welcome you home with a smile? What did I ever do to deserve this kind of betrayal from you? You haven't done anything wrong, Harlan. This isn't meant to hurt you. This is about me. It doesn't change how I feel about you. I honestly can't understand how that's possible. And what about Harper? What are you going to tell her about this sudden solo vacation? We've always gone together as a family. Now you're just disappearing alone? I've already spoken to her, she said. I told her I was going on a short trip with a few girlfriends. It won't interfere with our usual summer plans. She was okay with it. Honestly, I think she's glad I'm taking some time for myself. She let out a laugh, like I'd just told the punchline to a joke. Was she serious? Was this her way of mocking me? Did she genuinely think I'd just stand by and let her buy into this absurd fantasy? And what, exactly, do you have to contradict her story, Harlan? I'd already given her all the travel pamphlets showing where my friends and I were planning to go, even promised her I'd fill her in on every detail once I came back. You've got nothing but your own version of events. And let's be honest, she trusts what I say far more than anything that comes out of your mouth. Like I explained, this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. You're free to live however you want, and it's obvious my perspective carries no weight. If I object, well, that's just too bad. I don't understand how you think this marriage survives something like this. I've told you already, Harlan. We're in love. When I return, things will smooth out, and we'll be fine again. I'm tired of repeating myself. She hadn't thought about what kind of permanent damage this might cause. Even if we stayed married, and that's not happening if she goes through with this trip, or maybe even if she cancels, it wouldn't be the same again. I gave it one final try. Bianca, don't go. We can fix this. We can still bring it back. Just don't leave things like this. I'm leaving, Harlan. That's the end of it. But everything will be like it used to be, you'll see. I care about you too much to let this destroy us. That was the last word on the matter. I could feel the shift between us already, but I figured I'd done all I could. You've been honest about what you're doing. I ought to wish you well, but unlike you, I can't pretend to the person I married. If you're wondering where I'll be, check the basement shop. And Harlan, try not to injure yourself. Working around power tools while furious is a bad idea. I went down to the workshop, tuning her out, refusing to say a thing. I couldn't believe how blind she was. Yes, I still loved her, but accepting this? Never. I couldn't believe she ever thought I would. No matter what she told herself, I was planning to tell Harper everything her mother was plotting. If Harper doesn't believe me, then so be it. But Hawaii? Seriously? We dreamed for years about going there together, waiting until Harper was old enough to really appreciate it. And now, before we ever got that chance, she was off to paradise with that clown. Unreal. I started considering my options. She wasn't wrong about the divorce implications. This state didn't require blame, so I'd still be on the hook for child support for several more years. Most likely, Harper would stay with her in the house, and I'd be paying for it. I could manage financially. But the thought of my wife lounging around our home with her boyfriend, on my dime, while I'm stuck alone in a rented place? Absolutely not. And who knows what kind of men she'd expose Harper to. There didn't seem to be any real way out of this other than waiting until Harper went off to college. Then I'd be done. But emotionally, I was finished with Bianca. I spent hours down there working before I finally heard Harper come home. Saturdays were usually for hanging out with friends or spending time with Derek. Then it hit me. This might be the moment. I'd confront them both and tell Harper the truth about her mother's plans. Whether she believed me or not, at least she'd know. I started up the stairs, but I hadn't even left the basement when I heard Harper's voice, and what she said slammed into me like a wrecking ball. "Hey, Mom, did you tell Dad about your Hawaii trip with Mr. Hayes?" God, she already knew. Bianca hadn't bothered lying about going with friends. Harper was in on the whole thing, and she didn't seem upset in the slightest. Who the hell was Mr. Hayes? Did Harper know him personally? Apparently, she did. "We told him not long ago," she added. "He's downstairs sulking in the shop. I figured he'd react this way, but he'll get over it. He doesn't have a choice. I can't believe how selfish he's being, Mom." "If he actually cared," she went on, "he'd be happy you're finally getting what you deserve. He just has to accept that you want someone younger, someone who can give you more. As long as he keeps his lifestyle, why does it matter?" Who was this kid? Then it hit me. Bianca had clearly raised her to think this way. She was turning into a mirror of her mother. "That's exactly what I told him," Bianca said. "But he got all hurt. His fragile little ego can't take the idea that I've moved on. I explained that people grow over time, but in his head, I'm still supposed to be his woman or something. It's pathetic. There's no mutual respect left," she continued. "I'm just glad you got to know Mr. Hayes. He's thrilled about the trip. Says he's got some surprises in store for you." Unbelievable. Not only did my daughter know everything, she was playing along, and seemed to take satisfaction in seeing me degraded. And how the hell did an 18-year-old girl know the kind of man her mother could date, let alone one who could bankroll a Hawaiian vacation? I'd have to look into that. But now, at least, I had a name. "Sweetheart," Bianca said, "maybe keep our sex life out of the conversation with your dad, okay?" The whole situation leaves me feeling unsettled. It's completely out of line. You were the one who originally said things with Dad weren't working, and that it was time to find someone new, just like Grandma eventually did. Then, you turned around and complained that you didn't have the opportunity to meet anyone. So, now that I've introduced someone to you, I think I've earned the right to make some of my own choices. That may be fair, but it still doesn't justify you dragging Randall into this. You're still a minor, and he's your teacher. Well, great. Okay, Mom, I'll give it a shot. Honestly, I'm glad for you. But after that conversation, everything I had planned went out the window. There was no chance I'd remain under the same roof with those two betrayers. It sounds terrible to describe your daughter that way, but her behavior made it clear what values she had grown up with, and she's certainly old enough to tell right from wrong. Divorce, though? That wasn't going to happen. I'd still be stuck covering the bills until Harper graduated in June, but at least this way, I could reduce how much I was giving. If we were to get divorced, the court would mandate I hand over a percentage of my income, likely more than I'd willingly agree to. So instead, I'd move out. I could stay somewhere else, maybe even list my brother Mitchell's place as my residence, while keeping a joint account open to manage essentials like groceries and bills. I'd keep my phone line and email active so my wife and her new friend could reach me if needed, and I'd decide case by case whether I'd help out. But Harper's days of getting everything handed to her, including the car she's been obsessing over for 2 years, were done. I had nearly convinced myself to buy her that car. Working in finance and helping run the family business meant I could have arranged it all in less than a fortnight. As long as Bianca's credit cards cleared once they were paid off, everything would have run smoothly. I'd also need to line up a new place to live, but I didn't expect that to be too difficult. One thing was certain: I wasn't going to let myself be part of their charade any longer. I wasn't going to act like nothing had changed, but I wasn't planning on causing a scene either. For the time being, I was living with the neighbor and her daughter while I figured out my next step. I hadn't exactly lost, but I hadn't won either. Eventually, Harper would realize I knew exactly how involved she was in her mother's betrayal, and I was curious to see how she'd handle that. I headed upstairs, planning to shower and then grab dinner somewhere else. There was no way I was going to sit at the dinner table with a couple of deceivers after the day I'd had. When I stepped into the kitchen, both of them glanced at me with the kind of look that makes your skin crawl. Maybe they were smirking, maybe not. Either way, I knew what they thought of me. Harper came toward me like she always did. "Hi, Dad," she said, reaching out for a hug just like she used to. Normally, I would have hugged her back, but this time I just stood still until she let go, her expression puzzled. "What's going on, Dad?" she asked. I looked from her to her mother without a word, then turned and walked straight to the bedroom. Soon she wouldn't be my little girl anymore. I'd move my stuff into a spare room until I made arrangements to leave. But for now, I closed the door behind me and stepped into the shower. Of course, Bianca couldn't leave well enough alone. Those pathetic interior locks and their so-called master keys, just fancy screwdrivers really, were useless. I had hoped locking the door would be enough to signal I wanted to be left alone, but that was clearly asking too much. She managed to open it and came in firing. "What the hell was that?" "If you've got a problem with me, fine," she snapped, "but don't take it out on your daughter. She didn't do anything to you." I stared at her for a few seconds before turning back to the water. "Oh, silent treatment, huh? Very mature," she scoffed. "When you're done sulking, let me know. Dinner's on the table, by the way." Then she stormed out and slammed the door shut. I didn't react. I didn't care what she said anymore. I dried off, got dressed in a clean shirt and slacks, and stepped out into the hallway. Downstairs, the two of them were eating. As soon as I appeared, they went quiet. Maybe because I wasn't supposed to hear what they were saying, or maybe because they wanted to see how I'd respond. I wasn't sure. Harper beamed at me, like she hoped I'd join them at the table and act like things were normal, maybe even apologize. Instead, I turned away, walked out the front door, got into my BMW, and drove off before they could make a move. I ended up having dinner alone at a steakhouse nearby. I took my time, scrolling through news articles while I ate. It didn't escape me that not one of them tried to call. When I finished, I went to a late-night movie that wrapped up around 12:30 in the morning. I got back home at 1 a.m., thankful that the house was dark and quiet. I slipped into the guest room and called it a night. Of course, peace never lasts. Some moments are harder than others. As much as I resented Bianca, I couldn't deny she was still physically attractive. But that didn't matter now, because I was about to be interrupted. "All right, you're up. So why the hell did you sleep in here last night?" "I kept my distance from you, Bianca, because I didn't want to be close. There was no desire in me to sleep with you. And it was painfully clear you were hoping for something more. When you reached out, I stepped away, slid off the mattress, and turned so you couldn't see my face. I saw the flicker of disappointment in your eyes. Harlan, I'm still the woman you've always loved. I love you just as much as I always have. Let me help you through this. No, Bianca, you're not the woman I fell in love with. Not anymore. And whatever love you think you still feel for me, it's not the same either. As long as there's someone else in your life, I won't be a part of it. It's not hard to understand. The choice is yours to make. You can either stay married or keep your lover. You can't have both. I can tell you're not ready to hear that yet, and that's okay. I'll wait. I believe you love me, and eventually you'll see that what I'm saying and what I'm doing makes sense. I know you want me to be happy, and someday you'll realize that this one thing I'm asking for is something you're able to give. Then she turned around and walked down the hall toward the bedroom. Sunday slipped by as uneventfully as Saturday had. I spent most of it tinkering with tools in the garage, then came in to eat. With work the next day, I made sure to get to bed at a decent hour. By the time I returned inside, Harper had already gone to sleep, and Bianca made another attempt to draw me in. But again, I rejected her. The next 2 weeks blurred together, mostly because I drowned myself in work, staying late every night. I'd never felt that emotionally exhausted. Still, each evening, I went to her and asked her not to leave, so I could say I'd tried. The conversations were always the same. Bianca, I'm asking you again, don't go. Call him. End it. Let's rebuild what we had. I know this is hard on you, Harlan, but I need to do this. I've made up my mind. It's only a week. After that, things will go back to normal. You mean you'll keep seeing him? You'll try to be careful, but it'll still be the three of us. It won't just be us anymore. Yes, Harlan, I'll keep seeing him. I hate that it hurts you, but I need it. If you truly love me, you'll try to understand. This same exchange played out again and again, right up until the night before she left. As for Harper, she finally came to me a few days after I overheard her talking with Bianca. She climbed into my lap while I was watching a basketball game. Dad, please stop freezing me out. You're mad at me, I can tell. You always said that the only way to fix things is to talk about them. So how are we supposed to work this out if you won't tell me what's going on? I love you, Daddy. Harper, I could tell you what's bothering me, but I think there's someone better suited to answer that. Someone who knows exactly why I'm so angry. Someone else? Who do you mean? Well, sweetheart, maybe you should ask your teacher, Mr. Hayes, what's going on in my head. You two seem pretty close. Close enough for you to introduce him to your mom so she could sneak around behind my back. Maybe he can explain it to you. There was a flash of surprise on her face when she realized I knew what she'd done, and that I knew the name of Bianca's lover, but the guilt I'd been hoping for never surfaced. Like her mother, she acted like I was making too big a deal out of it. So, you know I introduced them. How did you find out? I heard you two talking that day, the same one when your mom told me she was flying to Hawaii. It's okay, Dad. It's just intimacy. She doesn't even love him. Why does everyone say that, as if it makes the situation less disruptive? Marriage is not just about love or pastel. She's going to go no matter what. You can't stop it. Just do your best and take what's fair. Then she left the room. I sat there stunned. It was bad enough she'd played a role in it, but what shook me was the way she brushed it off, parroting Bianca's indifference like it meant nothing. After that, we barely exchanged words until the day Bianca left. When the time came, she was sitting in the living room with her bags packed, waiting for her ride. A small part of me thought she might ask me to take her to the airport, but she didn't. Harper was there beside her, the two of them chatting, probably going over travel plans and whatever surprises were waiting for them. I was downstairs in the workshop when I heard the car pull up. The door at the top of the basement stairs creaked open. My taxi's here, sweetheart. I'm heading out now. Goodbye. It doesn't mean anything. You'll see. She paused, clearly hoping I'd say something. Anything. Aren't you going to kiss me goodbye? No. Suit yourself. I heard the door click shut, then her heels tapping across the kitchen floor. The front door opened and closed, followed by the shuffle of her luggage being hauled outside. A few seconds later, the car started, and I listened as the tires crunched over the gravel and faded into the distance. That was the moment I knew my marriage was over. I agreed to take a break from the house while Bianca was out of town. Without telling Harper, I began discreetly relocating my belongings during the school day, making sure she wouldn't notice. I even undid an earlier decision, returning my things to the master bedroom from the guest room, hoping she'd assume I was reintegrating into the home and might relay that impression to her mother. The entire setup was intended to lull them both into a false sense of security. I deliberately avoided discussing my move or using the term divorce. I needed Bianca to believe I would still be there when she got back, to ensure her surprise would be total when she came home to find me gone. She was scheduled to return Saturday evening, and by then I planned to have disappeared entirely. A few days into her absence, once the last of my things had been moved, the moment I'd been anticipating finally arrived. Harper, fully aware that I knew the part she played in her mother's affair, had stopped pretending to hide anything. That evening, I found her in the kitchen, fixing herself something to eat. I refused to help her with anything, and she knew exactly why. Then my phone lit up with Bianca's name. I let it ring out. Not long afterward, I heard Harper's phone begin to vibrate. I only caught her half of the call. "Hey, Mom, how's the trip going? Sounds awesome. Yeah, he's still here." But now that he knows everything, and considering I was the one who introduced you two, there's no sense in keeping up the act. He moved back into your room right after you left. He was bluffing, just like you said. I think he's finally come to terms with it. Okay, I'll let him know. Love you too. She came into the living room where I was sitting. Mom says hi, she loves you, and she wanted me to remind you that everything's going to go back to normal once she's back. I gave her a small nod, acknowledging the message but offering no reply. The remainder of the week played out under the same tense quiet. Little by little, I moved the rest of my possessions into the apartment I had arranged. Only what truly mattered came with me: clothes, books, essentials. I didn't bother with furniture, dishes, or pantry goods. The new place was already equipped. Friday night came, the day before Bianca's return, and I had to face the truth. Whatever had once existed between Harper and me had finally disintegrated. She'd finished her dinner and I was parked in front of the television, watching a show I didn't care about just to feel numb. She walked in and took a seat next to me. "Are you ever going to talk to me like a human being again? Say something more than a grunt? You forgave Mom? What about me?" I turned to look at her, a frown creeping onto my face. "What gave you the idea I forgave your mother?" "You moved back into the bedroom. That has to mean you're giving her another chance. That has to mean you've let it go." "Harper, I haven't forgiven her, and I never will. She shattered what we had. Where I sleep doesn't change that. It's over. I don't get why you're being like this. She's trying to make it right. Doesn't that mean anything? You don't get it, Harper. You're not even an adult yet." Suddenly, she jumped to her feet, visibly upset. "Just because I'm not 18 doesn't mean I don't understand. Mom told me everything. I know where she's coming from." My temper flared, and I rose to my feet too, my voice hardening to match hers. "She gave you her version of the story, one that makes her look innocent. She left out everyone else's hurt." "That's a lie. She was here every day for you, for me, and the one time she did something for herself, it all blew up, and now you're treating her like she's a villain." "What she did wasn't just selfish, Harper. It was a betrayal so deep, it left wounds. She might as well have driven a knife through my chest." She must have seen something shift in my expression, a mix of grief and fury that went too far. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Oh God, Dad, I'm sorry." But what I felt wasn't just rage. It was a cold, unfamiliar kind of hatred. Something had snapped inside me. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have a daughter anymore. Harper, don't speak to me again. I turned and left the room, heading upstairs to the bedroom for the last time. Behind me, I could hear her sobbing. Dad, please. I didn't mean it. Don't do this. Just talk to me. I didn't look back. I entered the room, closed the door behind me, and locked it. I spent the night quietly gathering the last of my belongings. By the time I flew back into town, I didn't ask Randall to pick me up. I didn't want to risk upsetting Harlan by having Randall there, especially now that Harper had told me Harlan had reclaimed the master bedroom. That likely meant he had calmed down. I wasn't about to disrupt that. Everything was finally aligning the way I had planned. When I got home, the taxi driver helped me carry my bags into the house. It was nearly dinner time. I half expected the scent of something cooking, maybe an effort from Harlan or Harper to welcome me back, but the kitchen was silent. Perhaps Harlan had something else in mind. I heard footsteps coming down the stairs, and then Harper appeared, running straight into my arms. She looked like she'd been crying. Hey, honey, I missed you too, but tears won't fix this. She buried her face into my shoulder, the sobs quiet but unmistakable, her entire frame trembling. This wasn't just about missing me. It went deeper. I carefully tilted her chin up so I could look into her eyes. Honey, what's wrong? Where is your father? She struggled to pull herself together, and I gave her time. After a while, she managed to speak. Dad, he left. He moved out. And it's because of me. Harper, what are you saying? You said he came back to the bedroom the other night, didn't you? I did. Well, we had a fight last night, and I said something terrible. This morning he was gone. His stuff was gone. He left a note. She nodded toward the kitchen table. I hadn't noticed anything there until then. A sick feeling crept into my chest as I stepped over. My fingers shook as I picked up the sheet of paper. It had been printed from a computer, though the signature at the bottom was in Harlan's handwriting. Harper had clearly already read it. I pulled out a chair and sat down to begin reading. There was no affection in the greeting. Just my name, Bianca. No, dear. Bianca, I hope your little escape to Hawaii with Randall Hayes, the place we once talked about going together, was everything you hoped for, because it's cost you this marriage, and it might just cost Randall his career. The school board won't stand for this affair. By the time you're reading this, I'll be gone. I only took what belongs to me. At some point, I'll return for my tools and woodworking gear, but for now, I've got nowhere to keep them. If it's a problem, I'll replace them. Don't try to use them against me. I've tried to make sense of why your physical needs started to outweigh mine. But they did. Maybe I could have forgiven a year-long affair if you had stayed home, canceled the trip, and shown me you wanted to fix things. But when I watched that taxi leave our driveway, I knew our marriage was leaving too. I also don't understand why you dragged our daughter into your mess, why you involved her in meeting your lover. The way she looks at me now, the disrespect and anger, tells me you told her things you never should have. You've warped her view of love and loyalty, maybe the same way your own mother shaped yours. I worry that Harper will never be able to have a healthy relationship with a man now. You've damaged both of us. Yes, I'm leaving her too. That doesn't mean I won't meet my responsibilities. The rent and bills will continue to be paid, like always. The joint account will cover essentials. But don't expect extra for your indulgences. Your pleasures no longer concern me. You seem to have ways of getting what you want. Maybe someone will be willing to bargain with you. My phone number and email are below. Don't call unless it's an emergency. Email if you need something. I'll choose whether or not to respond. Don't waste your time sending apologies or trying to fix this. I won't read them, and if you keep pushing, I'll shut the account down. Mitchell knows where I'm staying, and he's been told not to share it. Security has orders not to let either of you into my office if you try showing up. What I told your daughter during her meltdown on Friday night applies to you too. I don't want contact with either of you. You've broken 2 relationships I can't fix. I'm walking away, as far as I can. Harper can find someone else to walk her down the aisle, if she can ever convince Derek or some poor guy to marry her. I've loved both of you for so long, and it kills me to go, but the way you've treated me is unbearable, and I won't let it destroy me anymore. Harlan. When I reached the end, tears were pouring down my cheeks. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. He was supposed to still love me, no matter what. To realize that this wasn't really about him or Randall. Yes, I'd made a mistake by bringing Harper into it. But I never meant for it to start that way. It began with one of those heart-to-hearts we'd started having. She opened up to me about Derek, and I wanted to connect with her, so I started sharing things about Harlan and me. I told her how my mother had cheated on my dad when he began to pull away, and I admitted I'd been having similar thoughts. Then, after one of her choir performances, she introduced me to Randall. He was handsome, full of charm and self-assurance. I remember that night clearly, even felt closer to Harlan afterward, oddly enough. After that, Harper brought him up more often. She told me he wasn't looking for anything serious, that he was just into casual fun. And I believed it. I started finding excuses to reach out to him, just to test what might happen. One night, when Harlan was out of town, I asked Randall over for dinner. I told myself I was just lonely, but we ended up at his place. It wasn't love like what I had with Harlan. It never came close. But I stayed the night. And the next morning, we did it again. When I got home, Harper was there, and she knew. She didn't even need to ask. We talked about it like we were teenage friends whispering secrets. I hadn't felt that wild or alive in decades. It was addictive. When Harlan returned, he had no idea what I'd been doing behind his back. Somehow, I managed to keep everything concealed. That was when it dawned on me. I could continue seeing Randall, and Harlan would never know. Since Randall wasn't tied to a full-time teaching schedule, it was easy for us to meet a few times a week without drawing attention. We kept it discreet, and the routine went on for several months. I kept a close watch for any signs that Randall might be growing emotionally attached. Letting him fall in love was out of the question. Fortunately, nothing suggested he was catching deeper feelings, so we kept our arrangement intact. Twice a week, like clockwork. Before Harlan came home, I always made sure I looked composed and put together. I lived in constant anticipation of everything falling apart, but for a long time it didn't. Not until that day everything changed. The anniversary of the first night I spent at Randall's place was approaching. It wasn't romantic, but it did mean something, at least to us. That's when Randall suggested a getaway to Hawaii. Oddly enough, Harlan had once brought up the idea of going there together. But when Randall mentioned it, I didn't even think about that. I couldn't explain it. It just sounded too good to pass up. Being a stay-at-home wife made disappearing for a week complicated. I didn't have a career to use as an excuse, and saying I was visiting family would be too easy for Harlan to check. I began telling myself that if I presented it the right way, framing it as an act of self-care, Harlan would understand. Randall even hinted that reminding Harlan how costly a divorce could be might help my case. But the truth was, I loved Harlan. The guilt I felt over what I was doing made me think that maybe it was time to be honest. I wanted to believe Harlan would understand, that he would want my happiness enough not to hold the trip against me. I never expected him to react so strongly. I knew it would hurt his pride. There was no avoiding that. But I hoped that if I explained it wasn't about love, just unmet physical needs, he would see things logically. I truly believed he could. That's why I told him 2 weeks ahead of time. I thought that giving him space to absorb it all would help. But no amount of time made it easier for him. He never gave his blessing. Still, I thought that once I came back and nothing in his life had changed, he'd realize Randall wasn't a threat. That moment of clarity never came. From what I gathered, things didn't pan out between him and Harper, and eventually, Harlan walked away. But I doubt that was the full reason. I don't think I grasped how much he truly cared for me. Now he's gone, the one person I loved more than anything. But I've always been resourceful. I was confident I could track him down and help him understand my perspective. I might have to put Randall on pause for a bit and show Harlan it was over, at least long enough to bring him back into my life. I believed I could pull it off. Harlan's brother Mitchell had his current address. The two of them still spoke regularly, so I knew asking him directly wouldn't work. But Mitchell's wife, Felicia, seemed more promising. I had a feeling she either knew where Harlan was or could find out. Once I located him, I was sure I could convince him to give us another shot. I suspected Harlan was staying silent on purpose. He probably knew that if we talked, he'd relent. He hadn't brought up divorce either, which told me he wasn't ready to let go. That whole "never want to see you again" speech felt more like a dramatic gesture than a genuine goodbye. I didn't believe he meant it. Eventually, he'd realize he needed me. He'd be happy I reached out. I planned to start Monday. I'd call Felicia while Mitchell was at work. Until I could bring Harlan back into our lives, Harper and I would just have to get by. The day was gorgeous, and I decided to relax by the pool for a while. The apartment complex I'd moved into had a pool, a gym, and a big common area you could rent for events. I'd been living there for a couple of months. The first week was a blur of unpacking and work, and then I sank into a deep depression, days spent sprawled on the couch watching TV. Eventually, I hit a wall. I knew I either had to pull myself together or completely fall apart, so I made my way to the pool to enjoy the sun. The water probably wasn't warm enough for a swim, but lounging with a book in the sunshine felt perfect. I'd been on a few dates since the move, but none of them had led anywhere. I was still grieving the life I'd lost, and missing Bianca. Not the person I left, but the man I had loved and married for nearly 20 years. I'd been lying on a lounge chair for about an hour when I noticed a shadow pass over me. I opened my eyes to find a woman standing nearby, striking from what I could see. The sunlight was intense, so it took a few seconds for my eyes to adjust. She spoke first. "Hey there, I don't think I've seen you around before. Are you new here?" "I moved in a couple of months ago," I said. "But this might be the first time I've really spent time outside. I'm Harlan." "Marissa," she said, smiling. "Nice to meet you." "Mind if I sit?" she asked. "Marissa," I replied. "If there's one thing life has taught me, it's never say no to a beautiful woman. Please, have a seat." She grinned, pulled over a chair, and sat down right next to me. With the glare gone, I could finally get a proper look at her, and she was stunning. She had long brown hair and a knockout figure. I noticed she wasn't wearing a ring. Then she turned slightly, met my gaze, and asked, "So, Harlan, are you freshly divorced or just playing the part?" I raised an eyebrow, curious. "Why would you even ask me that?" I said. "Your ring finger has a distinct tan line and a slight groove, like a wedding band used to be there not long ago." "That's pretty sharp of you," she replied. "So you've been staring at my hand? Only as much as you were eyeing mine a few minutes earlier." She exhaled with a half smile. Damn. Thought I was being subtle. Then she added, "Technically, we haven't finalized the divorce, but I took the ring off and left our place while my wife was in Hawaii with her new guy." "That sounds like there's a whole story behind it," I said. "From the inside, it felt more exhausting than dramatic," she said. "But I can understand how it might come off that way. Any chance you two might patch things up?" "Absolutely not," she said without hesitation. "I still care about her, sure, but after what she did, and the way she did it, there's nothing left to rebuild." "You can fill me in on all of it over dinner," she said, her smile returning. I paused just long enough to catch her meaning. "Any place in mind?" "Somewhere with a little elegance," she said. "And you'll be asking me to dance. My daughter's staying over at my sister's tonight," she added. "So I've got the night to myself. Sounds perfect to me." Marissa lowered her sunglasses and met my eyes with an intense seriousness. "Just so we're clear, Harlan," she said, "I really like you, and I think the feeling's mutual, But I don't sleep with men who are still legally tied to someone else. Whether you're divorced or just separated, it's the same to me. So if you're serious about this, I need you to get your situation in order." "Well," I said, "looks like I've just found my reason to do that. But maybe we should start with dinner and see where things go." We stayed at the pool for another hour or so. Conversation slowed, both of us saving the deeper things for later. As I got ready that evening, I found myself thinking about how quickly things had shifted. I had genuinely loved being married once, but starting something new, especially when my existing relationship was still smoldering, felt risky. The marriage was dead, but the emotional wreckage was still fresh. Most of the lingering hurt was about Harper. She'd said some harsh things lately, but I knew she was channeling her mother's voice. In her world, a woman in Bianca's position was expected to take a lover. That's what her grandmother did. That's what Bianca did. And they passed that logic down. Harper had grown up believing men should accept infidelity without protest, just like her grandfather did. Eventually, I knew I'd need to rebuild things with my daughter, no matter what I'd told her. But as for Bianca, I was finished. If reclaiming my freedom meant signing over a check, so be it. I wasn't going to let money dictate my peace of mind. At exactly 6, I picked Marissa up and we headed downtown to a high-end Brazilian steakhouse. I'd been there a few times before. This was her first. She was wearing a deep green dress that hugged her in all the right places. It was modest in length, but daring from the waist up. "You look stunning," I told her. "Why, thank you, kind sir. You're not looking too shabby yourself." I offered her my arm, escorting her to the car the way my mom had taught me long ago. We cruised through the city at a relaxed pace, making easy conversation about the streets and neighborhoods we passed. Our hands found each other along the way. It felt simple, unforced. The hostess seated us at a secluded, intimate table, quiet, with just enough seclusion. Amazing what a discreet tip can do. A young server, Kelsey, with a bright smile, came by to take our drink orders, then left us to ourselves. "Should I be calling over a different waitress?" Marissa asked, raising an eyebrow. "Why's that?" I said, grinning. "If she keeps batting her eyes at you like that, I might have to claw her face, and that would just ruin the night." There was a spark of humor in her eyes. I laughed softly, not sure how serious she was, but I reminded myself to keep things cool. Sensing my pause, she reached across the table and took my hand. "Harlan," she said gently, "I really do like you. I'm interested to see where this leads. I didn't mean to take a jab at the poor girl." "I know," I said, "but I'll admit, I appreciate the way you made your interests clear." "So," she said, changing the subject, "what do you do for a living?" "I'm a mechanical engineer," I told her. "Senior VP over at Alpha Logistics here in town. What about you?" "I'm a loan officer at First National," she said. "Though honestly, I could probably live off what my ex pays in alimony and child support." "Let me guess. He stepped out on you?" "Yep. Got his assistant pregnant. I honestly can't see how someone cheats on a woman like you." "Well, thank you again," she said. "Do you have any kids?" "I do. My daughter's name is Juliet. She's 8, 3rd grade at Oakleaf Elementary, and if I'm being honest, I think she's already smarter than I am. Does her dad play a role in her life?" "Not even a little," she said. "My brother-in-law helps when he can. But we haven't heard from Jordan in more than 3 years." "What about you?" she asked. "Technically, I have an 18-year-old daughter, Harper. But we don't talk much anymore. She's adopted some of her mom's beliefs around cheating. I'd really like to hear more about what happened between you and your wife," she said, "but only if you're okay sharing." "I don't mind," I said. "Just know the story paints me as the good guy, at least in her version of events." "Don't worry," she said with a sly grin. "I'll be the judge of how good you really are." I've done my best to reconstruct how everything unfolded, from that foreboding, "We need to talk," to the sound of Harper's cry and the abrupt way she left the following morning. And to be fair, Harlan, I can understand your perspective. She's been shaped by her mother just as much as you have. Bianca's voice clearly echoes in her, and now she appears to regret allowing things to spiral the way they did. I can relate. Still, hearing my own daughter speak to me like that, like I was somehow the villain, was incredibly painful, even if those thoughts were planted by Bianca. Keep the lines of communication open. She'll reach out eventually. I hope she does. And if she doesn't, maybe I'll be the one to reach across first. I'm open to that. Now, Marissa, are you ready to share your part in all this? Mine's not exactly headline-worthy, but I'll be honest. My ex, Jordan, is an executive, VP at the Muscles chain of gyms. His job had him flying all over, checking in on locations nationwide. A few years ago, he brought on a new assistant. Long story short, they got involved during one of his work trips. Apparently, his bosses knew what was going on. I even received anonymous warnings and emails telling him to keep things quiet. When she turned up pregnant, that was the last straw. I left. I walked away with solid alimony, child support, and a substantial payout from Muscles itself. I don't need to work anymore, but I like having a schedule. It keeps me grounded. Honestly, that's still a pretty wild story. Maybe not as sensational as having an affair in Hawaii, but it's dramatic enough. You seem to be dealing with your breakup all right, Harlan. For the most part, yes. But in the quiet of my apartment, the loneliness sometimes creeps in. I'm sure I made the right choice, but that doesn't erase the ache of missing what we once had. If you're ever feeling down, call me. I'll come over. And I mean that as a friend. You don't have to carry all this on your own. We can hang out, talk, watch something, whatever helps you cope. People helped me when I was at my lowest. I'd like to be that person for you. Thank you, Marissa. I might take you up on that. She reached out and clasped my hand, her smile warm and steady. In that instant, I felt compelled to stand and walk around the table to kiss her cheek. She angled her face slightly toward me as if inviting the kiss. I wouldn't mind more kisses, she murmured, especially the longer kind. Maybe later, when you drive me home. I kissed her again, then returned to my seat. Dinner had been excellent, and our conversation gave us space to genuinely connect. Afterwards, we made our way to a local dance spot popular among the more mature crowd. Marissa's 35, for the record. Maybe I'm biased, but to me, she was by far the most beautiful woman there. And judging by how often men approached her to dance, I wasn't alone in thinking so, but she turned every one of them down. Eventually, we took to the floor ourselves a few times. We danced close, our steps perfectly in sync. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I pulled up outside her building. I had such a great time tonight, Harlan. Me too, Marissa. Truly. I paused for a beat, then asked, would it be too soon to see you again tomorrow? She grinned. Isn't there some rule about waiting after a first date? I hadn't dated in a while, but I chose to be sincere. No rules, not for this. If I could see you before tomorrow, I would. I'm glad to hear that, she said. I feel the same. I've got to pick Juliet up at 11, so maybe we can do something before then. I don't let him meet anyone I'm seeing until we've dated for at least a month. How many guys has he met? You'd be the first. Would you like to come over for breakfast? I offered. I make an incredible omelet. That sounds amazing. I'll be there by 8:30. Right on schedule, she knocked on my door. When I opened it, there she was, in black yoga pants and a white long-sleeved shirt, looking refreshed, like she'd had a peaceful night's sleep. I brought fruit for the omelet, she said, holding out a bowl. With her free hand, she pulled me into a kiss. Then, she strode into the kitchen like she belonged there, scanning the ingredients I'd laid out. Bacon, spinach, and cheese for mine, she requested, already arranging fruit onto plates. As I cooked, I noticed her poking through drawers and cabinets as if taking mental notes. I was about to ask when she said, "Our kitchens are almost identical in layout. For some reason, I think that's kind of neat." I laughed and slid her plate across to her. From the first time I met Marissa yesterday, I felt completely at ease with her. That feeling only deepened over breakfast. It was like we'd known each other forever. After we ate, we curled up together on the couch, talking and holding one another. But soon, she had to head out to pick up Juliet from her sister's place. I walked her to her car and kissed her goodbye. "Call me later," she said as she slid behind the wheel. I stood there watching as she drove through the gate, turned onto the main street, and disappeared. First thing Monday morning, I booked a meeting with a divorce attorney. I stopped by a colleague's office at Alpha to ask which lawyer he used during his own divorce a few years back. "My attorney was decent," he told me, "but if I were you, I'd go with the woman my ex-wife hired. It made even the most heartless predators look tame, if you catch my drift." He dropped the name of his wife's lawyer during conversation, and I was able to dig up her number online. Since Bianca wasn't interested in filing for divorce, I assumed she wouldn't be making the first move. That meant I didn't feel any real pressure, except for my own desire to move forward with Marissa. I started wondering if Marissa needed the divorce finalized, or if just having it formally filed and uncontested would be good enough. I scheduled a consultation for Wednesday afternoon, though I was informed that Ms. Drexler had a tight calendar and could only meet briefly for an initial discussion. I'd need to make a strong impression quickly. After that, she'd decide whether to take me on herself or pass the case to someone on her team. The receptionist on the phone warned me that Ms. Drexler was selective and rarely took on male clients. In the days leading up to it, Marissa and I kept our nightly phone calls going. I told her about the upcoming meeting, and she reassured me it would be worth the effort. I was more motivated than ever to keep her in my life. By Wednesday morning, I was actually excited about seeing the attorney, until Mitchell called. That wasn't unusual. We were still in close contact. "Hey, just giving you an update from this end. Bianca's been hounding Felicia for your address. She keeps trying to appeal to some kind of female solidarity. Felicia isn't budging, obviously, but Bianca's been calling more and more. Nothing we can't handle," he added. "But she's definitely getting more intense." "I can't thank you and Felicia enough for holding the line, Mike," I said. "Let me know if I can ever return the favor." "You don't owe us anything," he replied. "But who knows? We might take you up on that sometime. Has Bianca tried coming to your job?" "She showed up a couple of times early on but didn't make any progress. Now she just calls all the time. Honestly, our receptionist treats it like it's her daily entertainment." The meeting with Diana Drexler exceeded my expectations. She'd built her reputation by advocating for women in divorce cases, and that was still where her passion lay. But over time, she'd come to realize that sometimes women were the ones responsible for the relationship's downfall. So she'd expanded her practice slightly. She was upfront. She refused to represent any man who had been unfaithful. Thankfully, I had hired a private investigator, while Bianca and Randall were off enjoying their romantic escape, and the evidence I'd gathered proved she had cheated. That was enough for Ms. Drexler to agree to represent me. During our meeting, she didn't hold back. "It's women like her who ruin things for everyone else. No wonder men start treating women like disposable toys." She believed we could leverage the investigator's report to tip the scales in our favor. I gave the idea serious thought. Still, after 2 mostly solid decades together, I was willing to split things equally and take responsibility for both alimony and child support. Diana actually commended me, saying that was more than fair. But she also made it clear, if Bianca wanted to fight dirty, we could go all in. The report had already been submitted to the school board, and I figured Randall would be out of a job soon if he wasn't already. Bianca's standing as a community volunteer likely took a hit after those photos started making the rounds. Most organizations don't want to be tied to scandal. That said, the aggressive strategy only made sense if Bianca decided to push hard for a divorce. That night, I was staring into an empty fridge, trying to figure out what to eat, when there was a knock at the door. Marissa was standing there, holding a picnic basket and a pair of plates. I took them from her, placed them on the table, and gave her a kiss. "Well," she said with a smile, "now that's the kind of greeting I like." I missed you, I told her. Juliet's friend invited her out for pizza tonight, she said. So I took a chance that you hadn't eaten and brought some food. I also wanted to hear how things went with the lawyer. I know you're just as eager as I am to move this forward. I am, I said. We need to be able to speak openly, and that stupid marriage license keeps getting in the way. But who knows how long we've got. Let's eat. She unpacked brisket, a container of potato salad, and a small bottle of barbecue sauce. We sat down and ate while we talked. I gave her a detailed account of the meeting with Diana Drexler. You're being a lot more accommodating than I ever was, Marissa said. Jordan and I were married for 9 years, and I didn't give him half the grace you're giving Bianca. Are you sure you shouldn't be playing a little tougher? That's your call, I replied. But I'm glad you recognize that I'm doing my best to be fair. If things ever go south between us, I hope you'll remember I'm not the kind of guy who goes nuclear. Jordan wouldn't know what fairness looked like if it hit him in the face, she said. She stayed a couple more hours until she got a call that Juliet was heading home from his outing. I walked her halfway to her place, and then she finished the rest of the walk alone. She didn't want Juliet spotting me and asking questions. I waited until she went inside, then headed back to my apartment, feeling like I was walking on air. Meanwhile, my frustration was mounting. I couldn't understand why Felicia wouldn't help. Aren't women supposed to support each other? But she was adamant. She wouldn't help me track down Harlan's new address. I'd tried tailing him after work a few times, but he never went straight home, or I'd lose him somewhere along the route. Before he left, I was seeing Randall a couple of times a week. Once Harlan was out of the picture, that jumped to 3 or 4 times weekly. What other option did I have? I needed closeness, and Harlan wasn't providing it, so I didn't think it was entirely my fault that I leaned on Randall. Lately, though, I'd only managed to see Randall once in the past 2 weeks. He said the school board was ramping up its investigation into our relationship, and he didn't want to give them more ammunition. His union was backing him, but even he admitted the optics were bad. None of us ever imagined things would reach this point. As wonderful as our Hawaii getaway had been, I was beginning to regret it deeply. It now felt like a reckless and costly mistake. Harlan barely provides enough for me to keep Harper and myself fed. We cook every evening at home, and our only form of amusement comes from whatever's available on the premium channels. We can't afford a night out at the theater. Even then, we splurged on too many on-demand movies, and Harlan warned us that if it kept up, he'd cancel the cable entirely. His behavior has grown erratic. Thankfully, Harper's staying with me now. At least she still has Derek to take her out occasionally, although I can't give her any spending money. Derek covers everything, and now Harper says he's hinting that she should start contributing to the relationship by sleeping with him. She's livid with me over it. All of this mess traces back to Harlan's bruised ego. He can't handle the idea that someone younger might be doing for me what he no longer can. I still love him, that's true. But if he ever returns, it will have to be with a clear commitment to meeting my needs fully. If he can't promise that, he'll have to accept that someone else is willing to step in. That's non-negotiable. Then, on a stunningly bright Friday morning at 9:45, my phone rang. It may have been connected to Bianca getting served the divorce papers a few minutes earlier, around 9:30. I didn't answer. I was at work and not in the mood for a confrontation, but I couldn't resist listening to the voicemail right away. Her voice was sharp, urgent, nearly pleading. Harlan, this is out of control. I ripped up the papers. I'm not signing anything. We're not getting divorced. You have to get that through your head. We need to sit down, talk this through, and fix things. Call me back, now. Maybe I should have been shocked by how aggressive and calculating her message was. I knew there'd be a fight over the divorce. Why wouldn't she resist? She still believes she's done nothing wrong. I'd naively hoped she might approach the situation with a shred of humility, maybe even try to patch things up with some grace. But I was mistaken. She's convinced that I should accept her decisions as though I have no say, as if her betrayal is somehow a reflection of my shortcomings. not hers. I haven't even told her that I've seen the private investigator's report, but that might be the leverage I need to bring this conflict to an end. The proof was surprisingly easy to obtain. While they maintained appearances back home, they clearly relaxed their caution in Hawaii. Marissa and I had dinner plans that night, and I'd been looking forward to it. We'd only just met the week before, so I didn't know much about Juliet. That evening, we were joining Marissa's sister Lena and her husband Jasper. Their kids were at a sleepover, so this was a child-free night, my unofficial audition. I was nervous, but optimistic. Marissa had left Juliet with the nanny and was still upstairs getting dressed. When I knocked to let her know it was time to go, I was left speechless. She appeared in a deep purple dress that skimmed her knees, open in the back and clasped at the neck, paired with impossibly high black heels. At the restaurant, we were greeted by Jasper and Lena, exchanged hellos, and sat down at a square table, Marissa at my right, Lena on my left. The seating arrangement felt intentionally designed for close scrutiny. "Marissa told me you're in the middle of a divorce. How's that going?" Lena asked. I glanced at Marissa. She didn't intervene. I was clearly expected to handle it solo. That seemed fair. She'd earned that right. "My wife got the documents this morning, but she's going to fight it. She can't stop the divorce, legally speaking, but she'll do everything she can to slow it down. But you've got evidence of the affair, don't you?" Lena followed up. "I do. It won't stand up in court, but it gives us bargaining power." "Her mother's reputation doesn't help her case," I added. "She's infamous for cheating, so it's not like she can claim the moral high ground. But the charities she's involved with? They might care. Even if she stalls long enough, I can still proceed without her signature in the end." "And you expect Marissa to stick around while you go through all this?" Lena asked, her tone pointed. I'm not sure whether Marissa reacted. I was fully locked in on Lena. "I don't expect Marissa to do anything she doesn't choose for herself," I said. "If she decides it's not worth waiting, I'll be hurt, but I'll respect her decision. That said, I sincerely hope she stays. I didn't want a divorce, but I want to be with Marissa. That's why I'm doing this." "I see," Lena said, her gaze fixed sharply on me. "She's worth the wait, I think." She looked at me for a long second, absorbing my answer. Jasper gave me a slight grin, like he approved of how I'd handled it. "All right," Lena said at last. "You've passed. For now. But you'd better know how to dance when we hit the floor later." "I'm ready for the challenge," I told her. The evening played out beautifully. Marissa and I barely let go of each other, aside from the occasional dance with different partners. She and Jasper had clearly danced before, but given he was her brother-in-law, it didn't strike me as odd. Lena was built differently than Marissa, taller, with a slender frame and long, straight blonde hair. Marissa had more curves, fuller in the hips and chest. Seeing them side by side, you'd never guess they were related, but I kept that observation to myself. Lena and I made small talk as we danced, keeping the evening light and engaging. "I hope it's all right to bring this up. Marissa told me what your wife did. I'm really sorry you're going through that. Thanks. It really shook my confidence, but Marissa's been incredible through it all. She genuinely cares about you, you know that? I haven't seen her like this since she was with Jordan. Just, please don't break her heart." "I won't," I assured her. "She matters to me. A lot. I care deeply." When we arrived back at the apartment building, Marissa needed the car to go pick up the kids. Lena and Jasper had 2 children, Ariana, age 10, and Maxwell, who was 7. They'd spent the day with their nanny, who was keeping them overnight so Lena and Jasper could have some alone time. I kissed Marissa goodbye before she drove off, and then made my way to my apartment, walking beneath the quiet glow of the streetlights. I had just settled into bed when I heard a knock. I looked through the peephole. It was Marissa. I opened the door. She leaned in and kissed me gently. "Call me tomorrow," she whispered, and then turned and disappeared into the night. Back in the bedroom, I could still feel her kiss lingering. I needed a minute to catch my breath. I couldn't afford a lawyer, but the paperwork specified that since Harlan was the one filing, he'd be on the hook for reasonable legal fees. I found an attorney willing to take the case on contingency, trusting he'd get paid once everything was finalized. She explained a few things I hadn't realized. First, the divorce would proceed whether I signed the documents or not. If I refused, a judge would step in and decide the terms, though she doubted they'd differ much from what Harlan had already proposed. The offer allowed me to remain in the house until Harper finished her senior year, and for one additional year afterward. Child support would continue for 3 years, ending in June. After that, the house would either be sold or I could buy it. Harlan didn't care which. He was done with all of it. I sat there stunned. I had risked my marriage for something Harlan considered completely irrelevant. I tried arranging a meeting with Randall for the following week, but he blew me off. He eventually admitted the only reason he'd been interested at all was because I was married. The taboo had excited him, but now that Harlan was out of the picture and divorce was imminent, the thrill was gone. Harlan had seen it from the start. Randall was a self-centered jerk. And then there was Harper. She was having a hard time. She missed her father terribly. Though we were close, she and Harlan had always had their special connection, their shared routines, their inside jokes. His absence left a gaping hole in her life. Everything felt off balance. It had been 2 weeks since I met Marissa's sister, Lena. Aside from the steady, dull ache of the looming divorce, not much had shifted. Bianca was still refusing to sign the paperwork, still pushing for marriage counseling, though the effort felt hollow. Marissa and I kept seeing each other whenever we could. Sometimes it was just for a short moment after Juliet went to sleep. Thanks to Lena's help, we managed a couple of meetings each week. Lena's only request was that we stay honest about our feelings. I promised we would. Saturday came, and Lena was watching Juliet again. Marissa and I went out for dinner, followed by a club downtown. Looking back, I guess an encounter like this was inevitable. We were enjoying our meal quietly, holding hands across the table, when a voice pierced through the restaurant. "Get your damn hands off my husband!" There was no mistaking Bianca's voice. I turned to see her barreling toward us, a small group of her friends trailing behind, each of them looking more embarrassed than the last. She stopped at our table, eyes burning. "Caught you, you bastard! You're still married to me, and now I've got proof." "Yes, Bianca," I replied evenly. "You caught me eating dinner with my neighbor. Congratulations. Oh, please, like this is just dinner. I'm sure you're planning on dessert back at her place. Just look at her. Probably handing herself out for free." Marissa looked startled at first, but didn't lash out. Instead, she stayed calm. "I respect vows, even those that aren't mine," she said coolly. "We haven't stepped over any lines yet, but I'm looking forward to the day we can. So thank you, Bianca, for letting him go." She said Bianca's name with a tone that mixed pity with contempt. It landed like a blow. Bianca's face contorted in rage. Staff quickly stepped in, escorting her toward the exit. As she was being led away, she turned back and shouted, "Stay away from him, you bitch!" Then she was gone. I couldn't help but wonder if her friends stuck around afterward or just slipped out quietly. "So that's your wife?" Marissa asked softly. "Yeah. I'm sorry you had to witness that." "You don't need to apologize," she replied. "But she's definitely full of anger. Lena and Jasper are going to love hearing about this." Marissa wasn't shaken. If anything, Bianca's meltdown only made her more resolute. The rest of the night passed peacefully. We didn't dance. We just sat close together, letting the music wash over us. It wasn't the kind of place where people got up and danced anyway. She spent most of the night curled up on my lap, her arms around my shoulders. Her scent was intoxicating. At first it was the soft perfume she wore, but as it faded, the real Marissa emerged. Warm, unfiltered, comforting. We held hands the entire ride home. When we arrived at the complex, I knew what needed to happen. I walked her to her door. We paused just outside. "Marissa, sweetheart," I began, "there's something I need to tell you." She turned toward me, her deep brown eyes meeting mine. She clung to me tightly, her arms looped around my neck. "What are you trying to say, love?" I asked. "I didn't expect this," she murmured. "I didn't think I'd fall for you this hard, or this fast. But I need you to know, I'm head over heels. You're the last thought I have at night, and the first one when I wake up. I understand the next few months won't be simple, but I couldn't go on without telling you what's in my heart." She leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to my lips. "I love you too, Harlan," she said softly, her voice steady. "It's real, and it's beautiful. I'm still in disbelief that I get to call you mine. You're an incredible man." She gave a small nod, acknowledging what lay ahead. "There's no denying it. We've got challenges coming," she said. "But they won't beat us, not in the end. If things were even a little different, I'd already be pulling you into my bed. And when that day finally comes, I know it'll be worth every second we waited." We stood just outside her door, caught in a long embrace, kissing as the daylight dwindled. Neither of us dared step inside. We both knew that even sitting together would be a risk. We wouldn't be able to stop ourselves. Eventually, we parted. I kissed her one final time before turning away. Earlier today, my lawyer got in touch. It seems Harlan is escalating things. His attorney sent over a set of troubling photographs, pictures of Randall and me from our trip to Hawaii. Apparently, Harlan had someone follow us, a private investigator, and the images they captured didn't leave much to the imagination. The photos couldn't be used in court, at least not in the divorce proceedings. But they could still be damaging, professionally, socially, even personally. We'd both been acting like the divorce was already finalized. If people believed that to be true, these pictures could still sabotage any future career prospects I had. Looking back, ambushing them at that restaurant was a huge mistake. I had underestimated Harlan badly, mistaking his silence for weakness. I honestly thought he wouldn't want to lose me, that he'd be willing to compromise, to let me keep Randall on the side. Randall was wonderful, yes, but not enough to throw my marriage away for. I never imagined it would end like this. It's been over a month since I got back, and things have only spiraled further. This afternoon, Derek ended things with Harper. She had plans with him tonight, and I'd even slipped her some cash to make it special. When he arrived, her whole face lit up. She clearly adored him. I really believed they might have a future together. She's young, sure, but the connection felt real. But when he brought her home, she came in crying, bolted to her room, and slammed the door. I followed her in and lay beside her while she sobbed, saying nothing until she calmed down. "Derek broke up with me, Mom," she finally said, her voice hoarse. "What? Are you serious?" I asked. "I thought everything was going so well. What changed?" She brushed away the tears. "You remember I told you how he kept trying to push me into sleeping with him, and I kept saying no?" she said. "Well, he got upset. He said he thought I'd be different, because I'm so much like you. That really hurt." She hesitated, then continued. "I reminded him of something you once told me, that as women age, their needs grow stronger while men tend to decline. So it's not unusual for women to seek a lover. And then he asked if I'd expect the same kind of setup if we got married someday. I didn't know how to answer. He just looked at me and said, 'That's what I figured.' Then he ended it. He said I'd already made it clear I'd eventually cheat on him. That's when it hit me. People must be talking." I remembered that disciplinary records from the school, even involving staff, are open to the public. Someone must have seen the transcript from Randall's hearing. My name was probably all over it. Damn it. I know how society works. Even when the logic makes sense, women are still condemned for stepping outside their marriage. I knew it was a risk, but I always believed that if the consequences came, I'd handle them. And again, I was sure Harlan wouldn't confront me about it, that he'd rather suffer quietly than admit to anyone that he couldn't satisfy me anymore. I never thought he'd retaliate like this. Everything has blown up in my face. I followed my mother's path. She once told me my father had been enraged too, but in the end, he kept quiet. He didn't want the humiliation of it becoming public. She had been with Uncle Leo for years before he married someone else. Her name escapes me now. Sure, things changed between her and Dad after that, but she never regretted the choice. She said it was worth it. I kept trying to get Harlan to come home. Randall was out of the picture. I swore I'd cut him off completely. I told Harlan he was the only one I wanted. Once things settled, I figured I could find someone new, keep it discreet, and never speak of it again. Tomorrow I plan to follow Harlan after he gets off work. I had a conversation with Diana Drexler this morning. She told me that Bianca still hasn't signed the divorce papers. Bianca wants to talk with me one more time, to try and convince me to find a solution. Diana suggested I agree to meet her in person. She warned that if I don't take action soon, Bianca will keep dragging this out through appeals and motions for months. I told her I'd think about it. But honestly, my mind's been somewhere else. What's been distracting me? It's been 5 weeks since I met Marissa, and I've fallen for her completely. I'm madly, irreversibly in love. A full month has passed, and tonight I'm finally going to meet her daughter, Juliet. Marissa said this meeting won't decide everything, but I can't help being nervous. Juliet is her whole world, and I need her to accept me. We kicked off the evening with dinner at Chuck E. Cheese, a safe, casual place where we could relax and get to know one another. I was driving, Marissa beside me, her fingers laced with mine in that familiar, comforting way. But from the back seat, I could feel Juliet watching me. When I checked the mirror, though, she only smiled softly, seeming content as she took in the view. Once we arrived, we ordered our food and loaded up on tokens for the games. Before we even made it to our table, Juliet yanked my hand and pulled me toward the play zone. How could someone that small be so strong? Without hesitation, she led me straight into the play tunnels, throwing us into a game of tag that she quickly took control of. Somewhere in the chaos, I lost her, until I spotted her sitting calmly at one of the arcade games, waiting for me. "Where did you disappear to? You're crazy fast," I said, panting. She turned and fixed those big brown eyes on me. "Will you be my new dad?" she asked. I dropped to one knee and gently took her hands. I remembered kneeling like that with Harper when she was little, whenever she needed serious answers to serious questions in her young world. The memory stirred something deep and bittersweet in me. "I'd really like that, if you're okay with it," I said gently. "But you don't have to make that decision right now." She gave the tiniest nod. "I think I'd like it," she said. "My friends' dads don't play tag with them. But you did, and Mom says you make her smile, so I'm good with it." A tightness formed in my throat as I held back tears, overwhelmed by what I'd just heard and all I'd been mourning. I asked if I could hug her, and she threw her arms around me without hesitation. I was in awe of the girl Marissa had raised. Marissa, meanwhile, stood watching us from a few steps away. We returned to our table and began eating. I sat across from Marissa and Juliet, which gave me the perfect view. Watching them together, their resemblance was unmistakable. Juliet had Marissa's features, just like Harper had been the spitting image of Bianca at her age. The rest of the night passed in a blur of happiness. We played games for hours, burning through tokens and collecting tickets until we had enough to trade for a shimmering Barbie doll. Later, we stopped for ice cream before heading back to Marissa's place. By then, Juliet was struggling to stay awake. We got her into bed, and she asked me to read her a story. Once she was asleep, Marissa and I curled up together on the couch. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Do you really think you're ready to be a dad again?" she asked. "Honestly, I didn't know at first," I admitted. "But now that I've spent time with her, I can't imagine it any other way." She paused, searching my eyes. "And what if we decided to have a baby of our own?" Her gaze didn't waver, and I held it. There's nothing I'd want more, I said. To marry you, be Juliet's father, and have a child together, that would mean everything to me. Her face glowed with happiness. Then she brought up something she'd mentioned before, how tired she was of waiting for my divorce to be finalized. That night, we made love. I turned off my phone, wanting nothing to intrude on the moment. Later, I noticed a missed call and voicemail from Diana. Do things ever happen when you expect them to? I listened to the message, and somehow, the day managed to get even better. Hey Harlan, it's Diana, the message began. Bianca's lawyer called. She's agreed to sign the divorce papers. She'll come to my office next week. You don't have to be there. I'll confirm once it's all done. That night, I slept soundly. For the first time, the end of my marriage felt real, just a matter of time. That same morning, I had still been bracing myself for a legal battle. But seeing Harper curled up in her room again, sobbing over Derek's departure, made me realize how deeply it was affecting her. What would I really accomplish by dragging it out? Eventually, the divorce would go through either way, but if I kept pushing, I might cause lasting damage to my daughter. So I made the most painful choice I'd ever faced. I agreed to sign. At 41, I did what I could to handle the emotional fallout. I found a bar, drank too much, and left with the first man who noticed me. I woke up in a stranger's bed. I'd sent Harper to her friend Lillian's house for the night, and was thankful it hadn't cost her that friendship. The man was still asleep when I quietly got dressed and slipped out. My car was still parked outside the club, so I called a cab to retrieve it. Once home, I stood under a hot shower for a long time, then climbed into bed, finally able to block out everything. The rest of the weekend was spent with Marissa and Juliet. Saturday, we took her to the zoo. Sunday evening, we had dinner at Lena and Jasper's place. Juliet was with Ariana and Maxwell most of the time. They were like siblings now. Jasper turned out to be a solid guy, tall, fit, probably under 180 pounds, and a pro with a grill. He'd played college baseball and had recently turned 40. Lena was 38. While the sisters chatted and kept an eye on the kids, Jasper and I worked the grill and struck up a conversation. He told me they'd been married for 15 years, and that he still adored her. She's my reason for getting up in the morning, he said. Everything I do is for her. I just want her to be proud of me. I think she already is, I told him. She looks completely at ease, like she knows she's exactly where she's supposed to be. Jasper smiled, then added, I've known Marissa for years. She's totally in love with you, Harlan. You've got yourself a remarkable woman. She had invested every part of herself in Jordan, which made his betrayal hit like a blade to the heart. You understand what I'm saying? She poured her soul into him. I know what your wife did, and I'd wager everything I have that Marissa would never even consider doing anything close to that. Not in a million years. I appreciate that, Jasper. But just to be clear, I genuinely believe Marissa would never behave that way. If I had even a shred of uncertainty, there's no way I could have committed myself to her the way I did. At that moment, everything in my life seemed to be aligning. If all went according to plan, Bianca would sign the papers by week's end, and I could officially file them. After that, it'd just be a matter of waiting out the mandatory 90-day period before I could finally marry Marissa. And that's exactly what I intended to do, the moment I legally could. My thoughts were spinning. I think it's Wednesday, though honestly, I've completely lost track. Since last Friday, when I finally broke down and agreed to sign the divorce papers, I've been drinking every night and ending up in bed with a different man. Thankfully, the recent ones haven't been total disasters like the first guy, so at least I've managed to dull the pain. But today, if it is Wednesday, is the day I have to sign. I don't know how I'm supposed to survive without Harlan. I still love him more than I can explain. I just needed something different for a while. Randall meant nothing. I never had any real feelings for him. Harlan was supposed to be it for me. We were supposed to grow old together, laugh with grandkids, Travel the world hand in hand. That was the dream I held on to. Now all I feel is a hollow ache and a crushing sense of how foolish I was. And if Harlan ends up with that stunning brunette I saw him with at the restaurant. She looked perfect, young, breathtakingly beautiful. The idea that I destroyed everything and handed the man I loved over to someone like her, it's more than I can bear. I'm not sure I could live through that. I went to my attorney's office, and we headed over to meet Harlan's lawyer. I had hoped Harlan would be there. He wasn't. And as we went through the documents, it hit me like a punch. He had already signed everything weeks ago. He was that eager to move on from me. And really, I can't say I blame him. Maybe one day I'll be able to apologize to him face to face. For now, I just let my lawyer go through the pages, and I signed where she told me to. That night, I had dinner alone again. Harper wasn't around much anymore, probably creating space on purpose. Later I got dressed and headed to the club. I found a table with 3 younger guys and told them I could give them a night they wouldn't forget if they covered the hotel room. We practically bolted from the bar. I hadn't had a drop to drink. It felt like I was paying the price for what I'd done. Once the papers were submitted, there was a 90-day waiting period. 30 of those days had already passed. My love for Marissa and Juliet just kept growing. Juliet had started calling me Daddy, and I called her my daughter. Every time she said it, it melted me. Lena and Marissa were already deep into planning the wedding. They weren't looking for anything flashy, but they wanted something beautiful, lots of flowers, and a meaningful celebration. From what I could tell, they were handling the whole vision themselves. I proposed to Marissa the very next day after Bianca signed the forms. I couldn't stand to wait another moment to see her with my ring on her hand. But the one piece I hadn't figured out yet was Harper's place in all of this. Bianca had acted out of pure self-interest. She made her moves to get what she wanted, and in a twisted way, that made some sense. But Harper? She didn't gain anything, except maybe the satisfaction of seeing her mother smile again. And what hurt most was how much joy she seemed to take in watching me fall apart. That part stayed with me, and I couldn't make sense of it. I don't think she meant to be cruel. Maybe, as a woman, she connected with her mother's supposed emotional needs and felt some relief in seeing them met. My pain was secondary. Her mom's happiness was all that mattered. That mindset, probably passed down from Bianca, had turned Harper into another victim of her mother's manipulative logic. Still, it was difficult to accept the chipper way Harper spoke, completely ignoring what I was going through, as if my suffering meant nothing. That broke something inside me. It created a permanent rift between us. One thing that drew me to Marissa was the fact that she had a daughter. It felt like a second shot at being the kind of father I'd never truly been, or at least a version of one. When Harper was little, I was always working. Most of the parenting responsibilities fell to Bianca. That was typical for the time, and I didn't really question it. Harper and I still had our moments together, practices for soccer and volleyball, endless hours of drills. But those weren't the moments where you teach real values, things like love, loyalty, or mutual respect. I taught her grit, commitment, and how to push through. Everything else, I left to Bianca, and in the end, that choice came back to haunt me. I often wonder if there's anything left to repair. The divorce will be final soon. I'm counting down the days. Now that Harlan's out of my life, everything feels empty. Harper is 18 now and rarely comes home. She's grown, independent, and doesn't need me anymore. Not long ago, I had it all. A husband who loved me, a daughter who looked up to me, and even admirers on the side. But my ego and sense of entitlement ruined everything. I can't imagine how I'll cope once everything is finalized. Deep down, I'd clung to the idea that there was still a chance as long as Harlan and I were technically still married. But once the divorce is official, that illusion ends. I haven't had a real conversation with him since I left for Hawaii, aside from that scene at the restaurant, which barely counts. And no one, friends, relatives, seems to know what he's been doing since, Or maybe they just don't want to tell me. Is he still with that striking brunette he brought that night? Are they serious, or is she just something to distract him from what we had? Is everything going well for him at work? The thought that I might have derailed his career makes me feel sick. That was never my intention. I wanted all of this to pass without consequences. And until that one moment, it had. Harlan hadn't suspected a thing, and Harper had stood by me. Nobody had been hurt. Maybe everything would have come to light eventually without the trip to Hawaii, but it was my own reckless honesty that brought it all down. And now here I sit, sipping yet another glass of wine. Is that acceptable? Sometimes I set the glass down beside the bed. I didn't meet anyone tonight, but I know someone's out there. When I go out specifically hoping to meet a man, I rarely come home alone. Occasionally, that even feels like a kind of strength, not just some pathetic way to numb the ache or muffle the grief for a little while, even though that's exactly what it is. The divorce would be finalized in a matter of days, and the wedding with Marissa was scheduled 3 weeks after that, just enough time to receive the final papers and apply for a new license. This morning, Marissa and Lena took the kids shopping while I stayed back to sort through what was left in my apartment. Marissa's previous lease had ended a month earlier, and she'd switched to a month-to-month arrangement. My lease still had time on it, but that didn't really matter. We'd already purchased a home nearby so Juliet could stay in the same highly rated school district. Closing was set for next week. Even though Marissa and I spent nearly every night together, either at her place when Juliet was with us or mine when she wasn't, Marissa had insisted we wait until after the wedding to move in officially. So she held on to her apartment, and I kept mine. Money wasn't a concern, so I respected her preference. Then she texted to say they were heading back and asked if I was home. It struck me as a little strange, but I said yes and told her I was looking forward to seeing them. She just sent a smiley face in response. Marissa had a key. I usually left the door unlocked if I knew she was coming over. That's why I was surprised when I heard a knock instead of her letting herself in. I assumed she was teasing me, so I played along and opened the door. What greeted me was more shocking than if the heavens had split open and God himself had appeared. "Hi, Daddy." I froze, staring in disbelief at my daughter. We stood on either side of the threshold in stunned silence until Harper shifted awkwardly on her feet. "Can I come inside, Dad?" I had to give my head a literal shake to snap out of the haze. I stepped aside to let her enter. She walked past me into the living room, and I glanced out into the hall before closing the door behind her. Then I turned to face her for the first time in nearly 3 months. She was clearly fighting back tears. "What are you doing here, Harper?" I asked. "I thought I made myself clear that I didn't want to hear from you again, not after what you said." "I know I messed up, Dad," she said. "I need to talk to you. And if, after I say everything, you still don't want anything to do with me, I'll go. I just need a chance to explain. Please." "Fine," I said. "I'll listen. But first, how did you find out where I live?" "It was Marissa," she said. "Your fiancée. She called me, told me you two were getting married, and said it was time we faced what happened. Is that true?" "I hope you're not mad at her," she added softly. "She also told me I'm going to have a baby sister." This wasn't the same stubborn, dismissive girl I'd spoken to the last time. Something in her had changed, and I was curious enough to hear her out. I gestured toward the couch and asked if she wanted something to drink. I poured 2 glasses of iced tea and handed her one. "All right, sweetheart, what do you need to say?" "I'm sorry, Dad. I hate how things ended. Especially the things I said to you that last time. I believed Mom when she said you were just being selfish and trying to hurt her." "What changed your mind?" I asked. "A lot of things," she said quietly. "The first was Derek. He ended things with me." "Derek? I thought you two were serious. When did that happen?" "A few weeks after you left," she said. "At the time, I still thought you were being cruel. But then Mr. Hayes got fired, Somebody exposed what he'd really done, and word spread through the whole school. And once Mom couldn't give me money anymore, Derek started covering everything, and then pressuring me to sleep with him. Every instinct I had as a father flared to life. I made a mental note to have a word with Derek's parents. I'd known them long before Harper started dating their son, and I was certain they'd be just as appalled. "And how about you?" I asked. She looked at me then, not with resentment or rebellion, but with the hesitant, vulnerable expression I remembered from when she was little. "No, Dad." I might have looked calm, but inside I was completely relieved. What happened after that? I was still trying to defend Mom, and he asked if that meant I'd end up cheating on him too. I didn't know what to say. I froze. And because I didn't respond, he assumed the worst and just walked away. Would you change how you handled that? Do you think I'd ever actually do something like that? Because regardless of how much Mom tries to explain it away, that's what really happened. No, Dad. I wouldn't. It struck me how many times I'd called him Dad that day. I kept replaying that moment in my head. Even back then, I think my answer would have been, "It depends. Maybe if things between you and Mom had been different, I wouldn't have felt like something was always missing. Honestly, I'm not sure. But now I know. No hesitation. The answer is no. That's something I'm proud of." "Is there anything else you want to know?" "Yes, Dad. I've been spending a lot of time with Lillian's parents lately, just talking, being around them. I've lost quite a few friends through all of this, but Lillian's family never pulled away. I told them how Mom used to say a woman gives up everything for her family and never gets a chance to live for herself. I didn't expect their reaction. They said Mom had behaved selfishly, not just as a wife, but even more so as a mother. I didn't argue. They talked to me about commitment and vows, but they didn't just preach. They told me about their own struggles. Back when Lillian was little, Mr. P went through a serious illness. During that time, he couldn't be intimate. He told Mrs. P he'd understand if she needed something he couldn't give, that he wouldn't hold it against her. She told me she almost slapped him for even saying that. She asked what kind of wife she'd be if she left him during something like that. It wasn't that he didn't love her. He physically couldn't do more. But that's what those vows were for. To stand by each other through every storm. She never even considered being with someone else. And they were both very clear. When Mom made her choices, she wasn't thinking of anyone but herself. Just because she had what she needed didn't make it okay to betray what she promised. Harper, a long time ago, even before you were born, I had a much stronger desire for intimacy than your mother did, but I never pressured her. We only shared that part of our relationship when she was comfortable. If I'd followed her logic, I would have gone elsewhere every time she said no. Do you think she would have tolerated that? She paused, and then the truth settled in her expression. No way, Dad. She would have walked away, and I'd be the villain in everyone's eyes. That's exactly how it played out. Dad, I'm really sorry I took everything Mom said at face value. I didn't think it through. I got caught up in the thrill of her secrets and how close we felt during that time. But I see now that I was wrong. Tears filled her eyes and started to fall. I passed her a napkin, then wrapped her in my arms. I forgive you, sweetheart. I really do. I just needed you to understand it for yourself. If I had tried to explain earlier, your mom would have twisted it into something it wasn't, like I was attacking her. You had to see it with your own eyes, and I'm glad that moment finally came. So, does this mean I can be in your life again, Dad? Absolutely, sweetheart. In fact, I said with a smile, there's a wedding coming up, and I'd love for you to be part of it. I know. Marissa already asked me to be a bridesmaid. Lillian will be there too. I can't wait. I smiled to myself, thinking how clever that girl is. It's one of the many reasons I love her. She always knows exactly how to help, how to steer things the right way. But when I glanced back at Harper, I saw something lingering in her expression. "What is it, sweetheart? You look like there's something else on your mind." "It's hard to bring up, Dad. I don't want to come off as selfish. Just tell me, Harper. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out." "Dad, can I come live with you and Marissa?" My first thought was that she must be tired of the financial struggle, maybe because I've only been sending enough to cover the basics. So I tried to explain, "You know, once the divorce is final, things will get better for your mom financially. I'll be paying more support and alimony." "That's not why, Dad." Harper looked genuinely upset, and I suddenly realized she didn't want more money. She just wanted out of that house. "Harper, talk to me. What's going on? Why do you want to move out and live here?" "She's not the same person anymore, Dad. She's always drinking, or seems like it. Half the time she doesn't even come home at night, and when she does, it's in the morning. When she does show up at night, some random guy's dropping her off, and Mrs. Marilyn has to help her go get her car." "Does she ever bring those guys into the house?" Just the thought made my stomach churn. Not because I cared about Bianca's choices anymore, but because I was afraid for Harper. No matter how angry I am with her mother, I never want Harper to feel unsafe. "I haven't seen any of them inside, but I'm sure she does when I'm not there. I sleep at Lillian's most nights." "That's fine, sweetheart. You're welcome here. But this can't go on. We'll have to do something about it. We couldn't keep letting your mother hurt you like that." I called Marissa and asked her to come over immediately. Harper and I were sitting on the couch when Juliet walked through the door. My thoughts were elsewhere, and Harper had her head resting on my shoulder. "I guess that meant the wedding was still on, and you weren't angry that I brought Harper here with me. You really believed you could get married without me putting up a fight?" She sat down on the other side of Harper while Juliet climbed into my lap. "Sweetheart, we've got something we need to talk about," I said. I explained what Harper had told me about Bianca, the choices she'd been making that had us deeply worried. It was clear she was spiraling, and we couldn't just watch it happen. No matter what she'd become, Bianca was still Harper's mother, and someone who had given me moments I still held dear. As always, Marissa didn't hesitate to stand by me. "Do what you have to, love. It's important. Want me to come with you?" Something told me that me going alone would be the least confrontational option. I also believed Harper should stay behind. This was something I had to face myself. It was the first time I'd returned to the old house since everything collapsed. The yard was a bit worn, but otherwise it all looked nearly the same. Bianca's car was in its usual place in the driveway. No other vehicles around. I took that as a potentially good sign. I rang the bell. The house hadn't changed, but the woman who opened the door looked almost nothing like the person I once left behind. Her hair was tangled and unwashed, and she looked frail, wrapped in a threadbare robe. "Harlan, oh my God, baby, you came back. Please tell me you're here to bring me home. I'll do anything, I promise." "No, Bianca, that's not why I'm here, but I do want to help. Harper told me what's been happening. You can't keep living like this." She looked at me, trying to process what I'd said. Then something in her face shifted, like something had clicked. "You talked to Harper? You forgave her? You let her back in? What about me? Don't I deserve forgiveness?" "I forgive you, Bianca," I said. "Then why won't you take me back?" she sobbed. "I still love you, Harlan. I need you. Please, please." I didn't want to raise my voice, but I needed to get through to her. "Bianca, I'm not here to reopen old doors. I'm here to get you help." I brought her to the hospital, where doctors discovered her blood alcohol content was dangerously high. A psychiatric evaluation followed, and she was placed on a 72-hour hold due to the risk she posed to herself. During those 3 days, Marissa and I started researching rehab programs. We toured several before finding one that gave us hope. Admission had to be her choice. All we could do was wait and pray she'd agree. That was 7 years ago. Now, As I get ready to escort Harper down the aisle to marry her partner of 4 years, those memories come flooding back. It's been a long, often painful journey, but we got through most of it. Marissa and I are still deeply in love. Juliet just turned 15. She's devoted to her big sister and looks radiant in her violet satin dress, standing beside Harper as her maid of honor. Officially, she's not allowed to date yet, though she occasionally mentions boys she likes. There have been a few school day relationships, but only within class hours. Aubrey is 5 now, and she idolizes Juliet almost as much as Juliet adores Harper. She's starting school soon, already recognizing some simple words, thanks to Juliet's nightly storytelling. Tessa, who's 3, is non-stop energy until she's out cold. One second she's dashing around the room, the next she's fast asleep on the couch. I carry her to bed every night, every single night, and each time I find my luminous wife already seated, today in the chair reserved for the mother of the bride, a seat she shares with Bianca. Bianca's husband, Marshall, sits directly behind them. Her first attempt at rehab didn't succeed, but after enduring repeated health scares and several collapses, she eventually made the choice to seek treatment on her own. That time, it took. Marissa, now 8 months pregnant, grows more beautiful with every passing day. Yes, it's another girl if you're wondering. We haven't decided on a name yet, but there's a strong possibility we'll name her after Aunt Lena. Do I still miss the version of Bianca I once married? The life we envisioned together? Absolutely. I used to picture us growing old in that house, surrounded by children and grandchildren. But it wasn't meant to be. Still, we've found a kind of peace. We even visit Bianca and Marshall every month or two. It's not the future I once imagined, but it's a good one. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.